This is part 2 of our career day for careers in education, law, military, and the government. All of these careers are education careers. So you will recognize most of our guests in this video because most of them work right here at Eastern. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be the principal of our school? I think it would be a very hard job, and there's probably a lot of things that you've never thought about that Ms. Kemper does. So let's hear all about her job as a principal.
First of all, I wish you face um, um, skills I have to start principal a little first time ago after the principal retired of being principal of my school. Um, it's not to be about this regard. Ask them, did true teacher just know how what wording um, is and to teach most things many can has a some or long so it comes to be creation. Things get as a get your your one other out to a that steps. I did roll and then I I'm sorry. And that was looking at finding students enjoy being children. Or high students. Prince teaching a really love the thing right once Corona ended. I'm working almost the other in their all days from rent. I was very alone. My child is free with any time that all great.
Thank you, Miss Kemper. Now, our next guest has the very, very best job that there is in the whole entire world. I bet you can guess that our next speaker is me. I'm going to tell you about my job as a school counselor. Hi, my name is Miss Johnson, and I'm the school counselor at Eastern Elementary. And I happen to think that my job is the best job that there is.
Miss Johnson, how long have you been a counselor?
I have been a counselor for 10 years, and before that, I was a teacher for 10 years. I have worked with all grade levels, everything from preschool all the way up to high school.
Hello, Mrs. Johnson. I am James from WBJM News. What's your favorite part of your job?
My favorite thing about my job, though, is teaching in the classrooms. I really love doing classroom lessons and getting to teach you all some skills that I think can help you when you're going through something hard or having a difficult time.
Miss Johnson, why did you become a counselor?
I like to make a difference to other people and make their lives a little better.
Dear Mrs. Johnson, what is the hardest part about your job?
The most challenging thing is when I can't make people happy. I work with everyone in the school, so I am working with the principal, the office staff, all of the teachers, the students, their parents, people in the community. And sometimes when you're working with that many different people, it is hard to make everyone happy. You can't always make everybody happy. And that's really hard for me because I don't ever like to see someone upset or hurt or angry. And so I'm always looking for ways to be able to make everyone happy. Another big challenge as a school counselor, especially in elementary school, is usually you are the only counselor. I'm the only counselor at Eastern. So where other people in the building have a team, right? So if you teach first grade, you have your other teachers that also teach first grade that you can compare and talk to. Same thing for people that teach in special areas, the custodians, the cafeteria staff. You have a team of people that do the same job or a similar job. And for me, I'm the only person in the building that does my job. And so there's not really someone else at school that understands everything I do, someone that I can go to for questions, things like that. So that can be kind of hard. There's also no substitute if I'm not at school. So that means if I'm not at school, that kids who need me, they just don't get seen by a counselor. Sometimes they have to wait. And also it means that all the work that I needed to do that day, if I'm out, then I just have to do it on another day. So sometimes that is a big challenge for me as well. My job is pretty challenging. It's probably that I do so many different things. And so I have to wear a lot of different hats and I have to change gears a lot throughout the day. So I go into classrooms and teach, and then I also have groups. I manage things like testing and scheduling. I coordinate lots of events like the award ceremonies or club day, things like that we do. A week like this where we have college and career week. So I'm always planning something and my schedule is very full. But at the same time, I'm available for students in a crisis or when something happens that needs to be addressed in the immediate as an emergency. So I have to be very flexible and be ready to change, if I had something planned for the day, being ready to change and do something different than what I had planned. And sometimes that can be a little bit challenging. The hardest thing though, I think, is some of the things that I see students go through, some of the really hard things that happen, some things that I wish didn't happen to kids, and having to help you all through some things that are really hard. Sometimes it comes home with me and I worry about you all when I get home. So sometimes that can be a big challenge for me.
What advice would you give any student if they wanted to be a counselor someday?
Advice for someone who wants to be a counselor someday. Well, first you have to be, probably the most important thing is that you have to be a good listener. So work on your listening skills, practice listening very well to your parents, to your siblings, to your teachers, and being able to hear what other people are saying and how they're feeling, even though sometimes they don't tell you how they're feeling. Being able to listen, like I've taught you in class about listening with your eyes and your heart and noticing the things that they are feeling that maybe they're not saying with words. So working on your listening skills is really important. Being able to do a lot of different things and being able to set priorities and schedule your time. Time management is really important because you're going to have a lot of different jobs in a school if you're a school counselor, and being able to be flexible. So you have to be able to handle it when things don't go as planned. So if something comes up and you have to drop what you're doing and do something else, those are some important things that you need to have just to be a school counselor. You need to pay close attention to what school is like and notice when other people are having a hard time, things like that. Work really hard in school. You'll need to be able to read a lot. I do a lot of reading so that I can learn more about being a counselor. And so that's really important. I also use the computer a lot. I create a lot of spreadsheets and do a lot of math formulas and things like that too. So you're going to need those skills as well. So work really hard in school and work on your social skills with other people. That's really important as a counselor.
Can you tell us about your education and training to become a counselor?
So in order to be a counselor, you do have to have a minimum of a master's degree in counseling. I got my bachelor's degree first in business and marketing and education so that I could teach When I was a teacher, I taught business and marketing classes, computers, technology. I had a minor in college in psychology because I knew I was really interested in counseling someday as well. And after I had been a teacher for a few years, I went back to graduate school. So I got my bachelor's from University of the Cumberlands. It was Cumberland College when I went to school there. And then I got my master's degree from University of Louisville in school counseling. And for the master's program, I got to learn all about what a counselor does. I got to see different counselors and visit them in their schools and observe them and learn about counseling. And then even after that, before I became a counselor, I continued going to school and got an education specialist degree in school administration. Now, that degree allowed me to get my certification to become a principal someday. And then after I decided to leave the classroom and become a counselor, I discovered that I really like counseling more than the principal side of things. So I decided I wanted to stay in counseling instead. So I have 3 college degrees, the bachelor's, the master's, and the specialist degree. The master's degree is the one that is in school counseling, and that's what you would need in order to become a school counselor.
Hi, Ms. Johnson. I was wondering, how has the coronavirus changed how you do your job?
It has totally changed the way I do my job, just like it has for you. It's totally changed how you go to school and what you do for school, and many other jobs it's changed as well. I've had to rely on technology a lot, so texting, email, doing Zoom meetings, things like that. Luckily, technology is what I used to teach, if you remember, so it's something that I feel like I'm pretty good at, so that has helped a little bit. But I really miss people, and a part of the reason I wanted to be a counselor is because I love people and I want to help people, and so it's been hard to check in on people. Usually if I see someone crying or I see someone who looks upset, I can check in and see how I can help. And when I'm not seeing you all, I don't know who needs me unless you reach out to me, or if I send a text or something to a parent or somebody to check on you, then I can do that as well. Hopefully things will get back to normal sooner rather than later. But I know that we're doing what we need to do to stay safe and stay healthy. So sometimes we have to make a sacrifice and sacrifice the way we do things and what we're used to. And so I'm happy that we're able to do that, and we're still able to talk, and we're still able to see each other in different ways. I know there's a lot of you that want to be teachers when you grow up. So I asked some of our teachers to tell us about their jobs. And the first one we have is Miss Walton, who teaches kindergarten. And right after her, you'll see Miss Sawyer, who teaches 3rd grade. And then Miss Moore is going to tell us about teaching 5th grade at Eastern. Let's learn all about being a teacher.
Hi, my name is Jessie Walton. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Eastern. Ms. Johnson sent me a list of questions that I'm going to try to answer for college and career readiness week. So, where I work, Eastern Kindergarten. How long? I've only been at Eastern for a year, but this is actually my 14th year teaching. I taught 11 years in Texas. 8 of those I was in 1st grade, and 3 of those I was in 3rd grade. And then my family and I decided to move to Kentucky to be closer to our families. My husband's family's here in Scott County, and my mom and the rest of my family are in Ohio. So my dad and stepmom still live in Texas. So we do go back and visit. But we moved back here. I worked 2 years at Providence Christian Academy here in town. And then this is my 1st year at Eastern. So that's 14 years total. What's rewarding about my job? My kids. My kids, their families, getting to know them, not just academically, but who they are, what they like to do, what they do outside of a school setting, the whole package. Everything about them just makes me so happy. And one of my favorite things is when they come in the morning and they're so excited to see me and they run over and they give me great big hugs, or when we're getting ready to go for the day and I get big hugs then too. Those are probably the most rewarding things about my job, especially also when they get something that they haven't gotten before. The most challenging thing about my job is right now. Before all of this, I would have said the most challenging thing is to change schools. I worked most of my career at one school, and I didn't think I'd ever leave, but things change, and we wanted to be closer to family, so I did. And that was a tough move. I had to get used to a new principal, new teachers, and I did that at PCA for a couple years, and then I moved again here to Eastern, and it's the same thing. I've been very, very, very blessed that at the 3 schools I've been at, the teachers, the staff, the kids, the families, they've all been wonderful, so it's made it a much easier transition each time. But if I had to talk about it right now, it would be trying to teach remotely, trying to teach with NTI packets, trying to still connect with my families and my kiddos the way we did before we left. That has been very much a challenge. It's taught me a lot of things about myself. It's taught me a lot of things about my family. It's taught me a lot of things about my kiddos in class and their families. A lot of them good things. What level of education do you need to be a teacher? I have a 4-year bachelor's degree, and then I have my teaching certificates here in Kentucky, and then I have my teaching certificate in Texas as well. So I actually graduated from Campbellsville University here in Kentucky, and then right after I graduated, I moved to Texas. And no matter what state you go to, you have to take new tests for your certifications to be a teacher, because each state is different. So I took my test there and passed those. And then when I came back to Kentucky, I had passed my certification when I graduated college, but I'd never taught a day in Kentucky. So thankfully, they didn't need me to test again. They were just able to take my information from Texas, knowing that I passed my test in Kentucky originally, and I got my teaching certificate that way. I did a little bit of a different path. Mostly when you hear about college, you hear about someone going to college for 4 years and they stay at the same school. I actually did 2 years at a junior college where I was able to live at home, work. I did play softball for the college, or the junior college, and I was paying for my tuition at the time. So I was able to, it made it cheaper for me to go, and so I went for 2 years and got my associate's degree, and then graduated from Columbus State, and then moved to Campbellsville, where I did 2 years at Campbellsville University to finish my 4-year degree, as well as play softball there. So a little bit different, but it's still a 4-year degree. If something were to have happened, my thought was if I didn't finish my 4-year degree, I would have still had my 2-year degree where I could have done something with that. But it worked out and I got to do all 4 years. Advice for anyone wanting to be a teacher. Do it. It's worth it. It's tough. I'm not going to lie about that. It's tough. It's not easy. But it is one of the most rewarding jobs you could ever have. Ever. Even in times like this where it's super, super tough to be in the house all the time and away from my classroom and away from my school kids, they still make it worth it every single day. If this is what you want to do, you know this is what you want to do, typically even when you're at a very young age. I knew when I was little this is what I wanted to do. And I was able to make that happen. The next question was, how does the pandemic change my career? A lot. A lot. I don't get to see smiling faces every day. I don't get to give hugs every day. That's tough. I don't get to talk to my kids every day. it's been a lot. Thankfully, I have wonderful families and I have wonderful kiddos who hop on the Zoom calls, and I get to talk to them on the phone, and some of them FaceTime. And you can see behind me, I didn't have an office. There was no need for one in my house for me. And so I had to move into the basement as my school office. And my kids have decorated my wall with all of their drawings that they have made me, and a lot of them have dropped them off in my mailbox or mailed them to me, or I've dropped some things off for some families and they've put them on the front porch. So it's changed a lot for me, but I still get to teach my kids. I still get to see my kids. I still get to interact with them. And for that, I am very, very, very thankful. So I hope you learned a little bit about being a elementary school teacher, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Sawyer, and I teach 3rd grade at Eastern Elementary, so most of you probably know me as Miss Sawyer.
How long have you been a teacher?
This is my 6th year of teaching. I taught 3rd grade, then 4th grade science for 2 years. Then I moved to Virginia and taught 3rd grade and then 1st grade in Virginia, and then I am back in Kentucky now teaching 3rd grade again, which I really love.
What is the most rewarding thing about your job?
The most rewarding thing about my job is definitely my students. I would not want to get up every day and go and just sit and work if I didn't have all of my students coming in every day. I love building relationships with them, seeing them grow over the year, whether it's their emotional growth or the friendships that they make, academically, the things that they couldn't do at the beginning of the year, and as time goes on, the things that they learn to do and can not only do but do it with confidence. That's really rewarding for me.
What is the most challenging thing about your job?
I would say the most challenging thing about my job is how much of it there is. You think that it's a simple job because we are teachers, so therefore we must teach, and that's all that there is. But there's a lot more to it. If just teaching, we have to decide what it is that we're going to teach, how we're going to teach it, what strategies we're going to use. We want to make sure that we're not just using worksheets or just videos or just manipulatives, which are like little pieces that you can move around, or maybe activities with puzzle pieces. And we've got to do a combination of those things. And if somebody in our class isn't getting it, what are we going to do to make sure that they do get it, and who are good people for them to work with, who are not good people for them to work with. So there's all those parts that come with teaching. And then there are extra things of maybe there's behaviors. There's students that have things going on at home and you want to make sure that they're okay, making sure that people are fed and taken care of. There's things after school. You have grading to do, which takes a long time. Professional development. We want to make sure that we are being our best selves. We're teaching you as students to learn things and teach you the things that you need to know, but then there are also things as teachers that we're supposed to know and learn and keep track of. And so keeping on top of all of those things every single day is a lot. It's enjoyable work. It's just a lot of work. So that's probably the most challenging, is that there's so much more to teaching than just standing up in front of a bunch of kids and saying things and teaching them. There's a lot more to that. So that would be what I would say is the most challenging. Still enjoyable, but challenging.
What level of education do you need to do your job?
You need a college education to be a teacher. So if you go to school for 2 years, that's an associate's degree. If you go to college for 4 years, that's a bachelor's degree, and you need to have a bachelor's degree to teach in Kentucky. At some point, you should get your master's, which is an additional 2 years of school. That used to be something that you had to do in Kentucky, was to go to school for an additional 2 years, making the total 6. But then that was changed recently, so it's not required. that you do that extra 2 years. And some people go on even further than that and further their education even more, but 4 years of college is required for teaching.
What training did you need in order to be a teacher?
So for my job, I need to have those 4 years of school. I need to have my bachelor's degree. And in order to graduate from college, I had to do student teaching. And so that's when you are in that process of school. When you've done about 3.5 years of college, your last half year is usually spent mostly in the classroom where you are working with another teacher. I did 2 student teacher placements. I was at 2 different schools. I was at 4th grade with Miss Cook, who was named Teacher of the Year this year. Congratulations to her. So I worked with her in 4th grade. And then the next time I did it, I was with Amy Baker, who was at Western Elementary, and now she's at a school in Lexington. And both of them are fantastic, and I got to work with them, and they were the main teacher that was there doing most of the work and most of their job, and they were the ones that were kind of mentoring me and helping me out and showing me things of what really teaching is like, and gave me the opportunity to teach some lessons and work with small groups with students. So it was kind of like if you're learning how to ride a bike, you get training wheels. This was very much half a year where you're wearing training wheels and you're teaching kind of, you're riding your bike kind of, but you have a whole lot of help with you, and somebody else is doing the work most of the time. And so then after you graduate, then you get your bachelor's degree. And then anybody that wants to be a teacher also needs to pass the praxis test. In Kentucky, that's a requirement. So the praxis test, depending on what kind of teacher you want to be, you're going to take a different kind of test. For me, since I wanted to be an elementary school teacher, I took the elementary teacher tests, which basically they check and make sure that you know your stuff. They want to make sure that you know what you would be teaching kids, that if you think that 5 times 6 is 35, there's a problem there. So they want to kind of double check and make sure, did they get a good education at the college they went to? Do they know these things that they need to be able to pass on to their students? So that was some of the training that I needed before I could even teach. And then every year, even though I am a teacher and I have a job, we also have to do something called professional development, where we are keeping up to date on new strategies and trying to make sure that we are not just teaching the same way that we did the first year that we started teaching. We're always learning, we're always getting better, we're always trying to grow, which is what we encourage you all to do as students, is to grow and get better, and teachers are also working on doing that as well. So that's something that's important for teachers to do, and part of the required training for us.
What advice do you have for students that are interested in being a teacher?
Advice that I have for students who are wanting to be a teacher, the first thing that I would say is that I knew when I was in 3rd grade that I wanted to be a teacher. And it was definitely the right thing for me. All the way through college, we did practice, like where we would go into classrooms. You probably had them in a class before, where I was a student teacher or a TA, and I would be in the classroom and there was a teacher that was there, but I would be there and helping, and maybe I would pull groups, and I was kind of just seeing what it was like to be in a classroom and see what really good teachers were doing. So I was kind of watching them and seeing what they were doing. And so the entire time that I was going through elementary school, middle school, high school, and college, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, and it was definitely the thing that I wanted to do. And that worked out for me, and I'm still very happy with the decision that I've made. I think that if you are wanting to become a teacher, I think that you should figure out what grade level you want to work with, because when you go to college, you need to kind of decide if you want to work for or if you want to work at an elementary school or middle school or high school. Because in elementary, if you're going to be an elementary school teacher, pretty much you're going to be teaching all of it. You're going to teach language arts, you're going to teach reading, writing, grammar, math, science, social studies. You teach it all. When you get into older grades into middle school and high school, you kind of have to pick a focus. So usually in middle school and high school, you either teach math or reading or writing or any of those other things, and you don't really teach multiple subjects. You pick one and you kind of stick with it. So that's something to consider as you're trying to decide what it is that you want to do. Something that I would actually recommend for people who think that they want to be teachers. Oftentimes we think that we want to be the jobs that we see. If our dad works as an electrician, we know that that's an option as a job or as a career, that we could be an electrician. We meet teachers and we have teachers all through school, and so we know that that's a career option. Think about what it is that you want to do with teaching. What is it about being a teacher makes you want to be one? Because you might want to be a teacher at an elementary school or in a middle school or a high school or even at a college, but you might also want to do something else that's kind of like teaching. You might want to train people how to do some other part of a job. Maybe you want to, when somebody comes on at your job at a factory, you like being the person who trains them how to do their job. That's another form of teaching. You might like the really helpful part of that, where you really like helping people. And so maybe you don't want to be a teacher, you want to be something else that is that's another helper, or like a nurse or something like that, that's the part that you really think is exciting. Or maybe you want to work with kids and you don't want to be a teacher necessarily. Maybe you want to work in a daycare, or maybe you do want to work as a medical professional who works with children, like a pediatrician. So I think that when you are looking at a job, whether it's teaching or any job, think about what it is about that job that you really like. What is it that you want to get out of that job? What part of it that says, yes, that's why I know that I want to be that as my career? What is it that really like sparks a excitement in you? And then see if there are other jobs that also might apply. And I only say that because there are some people who think that they want to be teachers because they haven't really looked at other options. They go to school, they start going to college, and then they start realizing, you know what, I don't really like this very much. And they don't have any other plan because they hadn't thought about that. They thought, oh yeah, I like kids, I like helping people, but then they don't think about what teaching actually is. And when they get to that practice of needing to step up and actually do the job of teaching, they're not really prepared for it. So if you want to be a teacher, it is a fantastic profession to be in. But no matter what your like calling in life is, or whatever you feel like it is, I think it's important to question it and say, hey, what is it that I like about that profession? And are there other jobs that might be a something that I would really enjoy as well? And I think you might surprise yourself with some of the other options that are out there as well. So that would be my advice, would be to follow your heart, and be practical about it, and see if there are other jobs that might be appealing to you based on what parts of teaching you like, or whatever job it is that you want to be.
How has the coronavirus pandemic changed the way you do your job?
The coronavirus has definitely changed how I do my job. Obviously, before I was not working from home, so that's probably the biggest difference, is not going into work and seeing the kids that I work with every day. We've been keeping touch over dojo messages and texting and calling, and doing Zoom conference meetings. We do those pretty much weekly now. And so that's been very different. I still get to see my kids, but it's not every single day. And so that's definitely been very different. And so teaching looks different, obviously. If you're not going to be seeing your kids every day, what instruction can you get going? And so we've been reading, and I've been asking discussion questions. But obviously, if I'm talking to a camera, there is not going to be a response that comes back to me as I'm asking the question. So normally, if I was reading in the classroom, we would come across something and somebody would say, oh, hey, that reminds me of what happened in the other book that we read. And we can make connections and kind of have this discussion about when we get to this word, how can we figure out what that word means? And that all happens in the moment. I can ask those questions as I'm talking to the camera, but then I don't get that feedback. I don't know if people are actually thinking about it on their end. I don't know if they are, if they have really good connections. There's so many things that as we are reading and discussing things, students make connections that I think are really cool. And when they raise their hand and tell me and they show a pattern that they see or make a connection, then that kind of helps other people learn, and it brings up this really nice classroom discussion. And that's missing from what instruction looks like right now, which has probably been the biggest challenge, is that missing part. That's like the really good stuff of a good class. Like when you feel like you've had a good day at school, as a teacher anyway, is when you've had those really good discussions and people were making connections, and that's just not happening quite as much now. Or if it's happening, it's not happening here and there at the same time. It's here, and then I post it, and then maybe there's connections that's made over there on the other side of the camera. So it's definitely been very different, but I have been very thankful that this is happening during the age of technology when we can all stay in touch with each other. That's been very important to stay in touch, and whether that's over Dojo or email or phone messages, and I'm very thankful that we're able to stay connected to one another even though we are apart physically.
Thank you for interviewing with me today.
And thank you to both
Jack
and
Lily
for asking me all of those wonderful questions. Thank you all so much. Bye.
Good day. I am Bryn Moore. I am reporting for WBJM News on a special assignment for Counselor Johnson. I am going to interview my favorite teacher, Mrs. Moore. So, Mrs. Moore, let's start with an introduction. Ready?
My name is Jamie Moore, and I am a 5th grade teacher at Eastern Elementary.
So, Mrs. Moore, how long have you been a teacher?
I am currently finishing my 21st year of teaching.
What is the most rewarding thing about your job, Mrs. Moore?
The part of my job that I find the most rewarding is just getting to know my students and spend time with them, and of course, helping them learn things that they find difficult.
What is the most challenging thing about your job, Mrs. Moore?
The most challenging part of my job is finding a healthy balance between work and home.
What level of education do you need to be a teacher?
In order to begin a teaching career, you need to at least have a bachelor's degree from a college or university. Then, after you start teaching, you usually have to begin a master's degree program within so many years.
Please share about your training, Mrs. Moore.
My advice to students who may want to eventually become a teacher is to learn all that they can now while they're in school, because it certainly comes in handy later when you're teaching it.
How has the coronavirus changed your job?
The coronavirus has changed the way I do my job in many, many ways. First of all, back in the day when we could actually go to the school building and have school, I would teach my students face to face. Now I teach from home, over the phone, or through using a Zoom meeting on the computer. Coronavirus has given us a better schedule for school, in my opinion. I'm glad I do not have to wake up as early to do school, but the hours do seem never ending. I used to dress up to go to school. Now I wake up and I just decide which yoga pants and which t-shirt works for the day. Coronavirus added 3 grade levels to my job as well. Not only do I teach 5th grade, but now I have my own 7th grader, my own 1st grader, and my own kindergartner to teach. I feel like the person in the circus who spins all the plates, and it's my job to keep all the plates spinning. One more benefit that I think coronavirus has brought to my job is bathroom breaks. I get to go now whenever I need to.
You don't have to work in a public school to have a career in education. We have some other guests today that work in other places. First, we have Elena's mom, who is going to tell us about being a children's director at a church. And right after that, we'll hear from Miss Woody's mother, who is a dance teacher in Berea. Let's hear about their jobs.
Hey everybody, my name is Nicole Azeltine and I am the mother of Elena Azeltine, who is in Miss Allen's 5th grade class at Eastern Elementary. And my job is I am the children's director and I'm in the financial department at Victory Life Church. I have been working with children for a little over 15 years, but I've actually only been at my church, Victory Life Church, for a little over 5. Prior to that, I worked at an early childhood education facility where I did many, many things. Like I said, it was around 10 years that I was at that position. But what is most rewarding for me in the field working with kids is I love working with kids. I love getting to see all the different ages and stages and seeing their faces every Wednesday and Sunday and being able to teach them what has been placed upon my heart to teach them, and just we do a lot of dancing and we do lessons and we just do all kinds of different things. So that is the most rewarding part of my job. The most challenging part of my job is actually because I work with all the children in our children's department at the church. I have anywhere from 6 weeks old, so itty bitty babies, all the way up through 5th grade. And so that sometimes can be challenging because, you have a lot of different lessons you have to prepare for the different ages and stages that they're all in. So that can be challenging at times, but still worth it, and I have a lot of fun with it. My level of education, I actually went to school for business administration, a small college in Chicago, Illinois, for design and technology, actually. My current job does not require me to have education, but they wanted the experience, which obviously I had over 10 years at that time. So that is kind of what was required of me to be where I'm at currently. However, being on the business side really helped me out in the financial department that I'm in at my job too, so I can kind of operate from a business standpoint, different things, operations within the church, financials, things like that, paying the bills, all that fun stuff that we have to do. But when I moved to Kentucky over 12 years ago, I actually had an opportunity to go back to school for early childhood development, where I did get further certification for the younger children, ages, like I said, infant, 6 weeks, all the way up through preschool at that time. So I did get further education after we moved here, and I love it. I love working with kids. I love what I do. I love being at my church. It is probably the most rewarding job I've ever had, and I really enjoy it. Advice I would give someone who wants to go into this field would be definitely have a passion and a love for kids before you do, because it can be challenging at times scheduling different volunteers, because you do work with volunteers, and making sure you have enough people to cover your classrooms and teach and things like that, because it's not just me. I don't just do it by myself. I have a lot of helpers, which is wonderful. So you could start by volunteering at your local church if you wanted to in the classrooms, and that's where I started actually. Before I came on staff, I was a volunteer. So those are definitely some things that you could do to determine if it is a career that you want to do. Start by volunteering. It's always a great way to figure out if that's what you want to do. And having to deal with this coronavirus or COVID-19, it's definitely changed how I have to operate, because I don't get to see kids every Wednesday and Sunday. I have to do things differently by going online and interacting with them and reaching out to families and seeing how they're doing, which I still love. I want to stay in communication with everyone, but it's definitely changed how we do things, because having to do lessons or talk to people online, there's not as much interaction, and I miss that. I miss the hugs, I miss the faces, but we're getting through it, and I still love what I do. So I hope that helps, and if you guys have questions, you can reach out to me and let me know. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Hi, Eastern Elementary students. My name is Stephanie Woody, and I'm a dance teacher at Berea College. I've been teaching dance at Berea College for about 25 years, and I love my job. What I love about my job is that I get to dance almost every day. A lot of the students that come to our college have never had dance classes before, so that makes it really fun. The thing I don't like about my job is having to grade papers. If you want to be a dance teacher when you grow up, I suggest you find a school that has a dance degree, and you go to college and study dance. Right now, it's been really hard to teach dance because all the college students at Berea are at home. So I do the best I can teaching online, giving more written assignments, and having them watch dance videos. I hope you are doing great, and I hope you will find a way to find that.
Thank you so much to all of our guests who spoke about careers and education. Stay tuned tomorrow. We will be learning about careers in communications and the arts.